Alrighty, welcome in everyone to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Monday, September 15th, and we had a lot of football to talk about. There is a great weekend behind us. 3 games that really define this weekend, and the 3 games that we thought were going to define this weekend going in, all delivered in a big way. We will get to that in the first segment. We'll break down Georgia Tech beating Clemson. We'll break down Georgia going on the road and winning a classic against Tennessee. And then we'll talk about Texas A&M, Notre Dame to finish this thing off. Then we got a number of other things to talk about. LSU gets a comfortable but not all that convincing win over Florida. Miami just rolls over South Florida. Vanderbilt gets a big time win. Ole Miss escapes over Arkansas, and a number of other things. Then we'll kind of wrap things up. We'll talk about Deshaun Foster and Brent Pry being let go from UCLA and Virginia Tech respectively. We'll get into all that in segment 3, and then we'll finish it off. We'll give some week 2 winners. Obviously we are big winners as fans, but a number of other things to talk about in that segment. But let's jump in. We had 3 games going into this weekend that I think we all felt were going to define this weekend. Some people would have said Miami, South Florida, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Miami handled that one pretty comfortably. But we had 3 games that I felt were going to define this weekend. They all delivered, and they didn't just deliver. They were incredible classic games that could totally change what the season is going to be. And we'll start with the noon slate. We'll kind of work our way through the day with those big 3 games. Georgia Tech beats Clemson 24-21. What a start to the day. It was an incredible game. Georgia Tech in complete control, up 13-0 early in this game. They were outgaining Clemson 185-63 early in this game. They were dominating. And then Clemson goes on a long touchdown drive right before half. They get a quick stop in early in the second half, and they find a way to score on a big-time Brian Wesco 73-yard touchdown. It looked like they were in control. It looked like they had kind of taken over this game. Georgia Tech was able to keep Clemson out of the end zone on the first drive of the second half by an incredible play by Omar Daniels on the goal line. And then it was immediately Clemson took over. Brian Wesco has that big touchdown. And you're thinking, this one might get a little bit sketchy. And they had a play on that touchdown drive right before the half. It was 3rd and 22. They were running the ball, kind of just saying, we'll punt it away. We'll kind of collect ourselves at halftime and attack this thing. And Adam Randall goes for, I believe, 25 yards, gets the first down, and then Clemson's able to march down and get a touchdown. That's where it felt like that could be the turning point in this game, and it looked like it was. Early on in the second half, it looked like Clemson was going to be able to take over and kind of do what they needed to do. Tech was able to kind of stick around in this game. Now, they did have a couple of misses. That tight end sneak was weird in a lot of different ways. The execution was not great, and I don't think the call was all that great, especially considering what Haynes King did in this game. But the defense continued to make plays for the Georgia Tech football team. All the props in the world to Blake Gideon, the defensive coordinator over there, because he did an incredible job in this football game, and especially the DBs for Georgia Tech. They flew around that football field. Omar Daniels probably played the best game of his entire life. You had a number of Clayton Powell-Lee played incredible football. Amari Harvey as well. This Georgia Tech team is for real. Now, we'll talk about that here in a second, but can't say enough about what they did on that final play. You have 26 seconds left, and Brent Key calls a timeout. He explained the entire thing, I have to imagine, to what this team was going to do. He was going to say, we're going to hand the ball off, we're going to get 4 yards here, and then we just got to get this thing off. We got to make sure we get everyone off the field. We got to get our kicking team on, and they drill a 55-yarder, the longest of Aidan Birr's career. Ridiculous. Truly insane in a number of different ways from Brent Key, but they pulled it off. It was an incredible coaching job down the stretch of this game where it felt like Clemson left a little bit on the table, especially offensively in this football game, and you have a Georgia Tech team that took every single opportunity that was provided to them and even left a couple on the table that kept Clemson in this football game, and that's really what we have to talk about when we talk about Clemson. They've had 2 games this year where LSU played good enough football to beat them. They absolutely deserve to win that football game. Troy kept you around a little bit more than they probably should have. There were a couple of drives where they had to settle for field goals, or they make a massive play where it rolls off someone's back and Ashton Hampton makes a play on the ball and you're going the other direction. This Clemson team has been in multiple games this year where the other team just outright outplayed them pretty much from start to finish, and a couple of mistakes from the other side is why it was a close game. LSU, they probably should have gotten beaten by 14 or 17. A call near the end zone that probably was the wrong call gives you 7 points back, and Brian Kelly probably making a mistake late in that first half gives you 3 points back. So you're in a position, if you're Clemson, you're in a really bad spot. And I really don't know what the fix is on offense. I don't know if you have outright game changers without Antonio Williams on the field. I do think Bryant Wesco is a great player and is going to continue to develop, but He can't be shouldering all of this. TJ Moore has to step up a little bit more. I thought both of them would. That's why, frankly, I had Clemson going undefeated this year. I thought this team was comfortably better than a lot of the ACC teams on their schedule, including Georgia Tech. They got out executed. They got out physical. They got out everything in this game, if I'm being totally honest. And Haynes King, if he is going to play that level of football, Georgia Tech is going 11-1, and they are getting into the CFP because that guy throwing for 211 yards in this game was the difference maker. He's going to be able to run the football. He ran the football, I think, 25 times in this football game, which is outright crazy, but he's going to be able to run the football. That's what he does. That's what he's comfortable with. If he throws for over 200 yards, if he throws that efficiently without putting the ball in danger, without throwing an interception, they're going to win a lot of football games because Brent Key is going to have them prepare. They're not going to make a lot of mistakes, especially if Haynes King is not making them, and you're going to put them in position to maybe run the table up until that Georgia game, and then they might be in one way or another. Even if they lose that Georgia game and lose in the ACC title, this could very well be a team that's standing in the CFP at the end of it all. Obviously, a lot of work to be done, but they set themselves up incredibly, incredibly well. They don't get Miami. They don't get Florida State. They don't get Louisville. They don't get SMU. They can do some special things this upcoming throughout the rest of the season. We will have to figure out how it develops. Obviously, Georgia Tech's been one of those teams that plays up to this elite talent and then finds a way to fade just a little bit in one moment throughout the season that totally changes things. But they're now 7-1 against ranked ACC opponents under Brent Key. Insane. Ridiculous. It's absolutely incredible stuff what Brent Key has done over there, and he's going to get plenty of calls this offseason. He played at Georgia Tech. He loves Georgia Tech. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. Now, the right job calls, things can change in a hurry. I can promise you that. But at the end of the day, I think this guy wants to build something there, and I think he's fully on his way to doing that. We'll have to see how the rest of the season plays out, but special stuff happening in there, Atlanta. As for Clemson, just want to say one thing really quickly here. There are very clearly things that this team needed in the portal that they did not go get. Whether it's a running back to help out Adam Randall where he doesn't have to be the number one guy just having played wide receiver a couple of years ago. Where you have players on the back end that are very talented players. Probably needed a couple more of those guys. Probably needed a couple of more experienced guys. You had R.J. Mickens last year. Probably needed someone like that in that back end this year. You don't have it. And you're in a position where now you'll be a good team this year. I think you'll probably win 8, maybe 9 games, but you're not CFP good. And I don't see you being CFP good until you change the way that you go about business. So this was what Clemson is. I don't think this was a uniquely surprising result as much as people will tell you that. This Clemson team is not as good as the Georgia Tech team, as plain as day. So we'll see what happens the rest of the way. Point is, they got to change a lot of things up there, and frankly, I don't know if Dabo Swinney's going to be willing to do that. Obviously, plenty of time to figure that out. Obviously, his legacy is in no way tarnished by this, but he's got to figure some things out if he wants Clemson to stay remotely close to the top. Moving on to the 3:30 slate, the game of the day, maybe the game of the year, as far as I'm concerned thus far, or definitely thus far, but maybe throughout the entirety of the year. But Georgia goes on the road to Tennessee, wins a game in overtime 44-41. That was special in a number of different ways. That was not what I expected to get from Tennessee, not what I expected to get from Georgia in a lot of ways, not what I expected to get from this game, but it was incredible. Joey Aguilar was the story of this game coming in. And through one quarter, he looked about as good as any quarterback, maybe not named Jalen Milroe, has looked through one quarter against a Kirby Smart football team. 14 for 14, 213 through the air, 2 scores. He was rolling, and everything was working for him. He did get a little bit of, I don't want to say a bailout. He underthrew the touchdown pass just by a little bit, but Chris Brazzell able to make an incredible play, probably played the game of his life on Saturday. 2 incredible catches that made great big plays for Tennessee, and the one that gave them the lead back was very interesting. It looked like Georgia was in full control of this football game. I think it scored 27 unanswered, if I'm not mistaken. And then Tennessee hits a big one. And you're thinking, what's going to happen as Tennessee kind of finally found it. But after that 14 for 14 start for Joey Aguilar, he went 10 for 22, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 INTs. That's why they won this game. Georgia, that is. Kirby Smart and his coaching staff made the adjustments that, I don't want to say Josh Heupel because it was mainly the defensive side of the ball, but Tennessee didn't make them. Tim Banks continued to play man coverage against guys like Zachariah Branch, against guys like Kobe Young. It didn't work. They got beat start to finish. London Humphreys beat him on the very last play, again in man coverage. It was bad, and it was a number of different things for the Tennessee side and the Georgia side that did not go well in this game, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So it's not to say Kirby Smart and company called an incredible game. They made the adjustments that Tennessee didn't, is the way to put that in a lot of ways. And Gunnar Stockton, it was maybe perfect. When you consider going on the road to Neyland Stadium in your first road start, playing a top 15 team, probably playing a top 12 or so defense. Obviously didn't show that on Saturday, but they have the top end ability, lost a couple of players that absolutely will up this team's ability later in the year, but go for 23 for 31, 304 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, and 38 yards and a score on the ground. He did everything. He did absolutely everything you could possibly want for Gunnar Stockton to do in that situation with this team, with that team on the other sideline. It was a credible performance from that kid, and it's one of those that I think a lot of people didn't really give him the respect that he probably deserved in a lot of respects, and I understand why, because you lose Carson Beck. Carson Beck looks incredible at Miami right now, and the offense for Georgia has looked pedestrian before Saturday. They found a way to put it all together, and that's something that Kirby Smart just finds a way to do in all of these big games. He has his coordinators play incredible play calling games, and Mike Bobo, one of the best play calling performances I've ever seen him or just about anyone make. He did an incredible job in this football game. The Georgia skill players, not only special, they're really deep this year. They have a number of guys they can go to. Nate Frazier obviously is going to lead the run game. He is the star of that football team. But Chauncey Bowens, Dwight Phillips, Josh McCray got 2 touchdowns, including the game winner in this one. It's a special running back group that is really deep and still has a couple of guys to get back. And then at wide receiver, you have Colby Young, you have Zachariah Branch, you have London Humphreys. Noah Thomas didn't even catch a pass in this game, but he is going to be a factor later on in the season. Georgia did everything this offseason to say, we know we're not going to have the quarterback from a pure talent perspective, not saying anything between Gunnar Stockton and Carson Beck, but from a pure talent perspective, you were taking a step down. That's why you go get all these guys. That's why you add so much around this guy and an offensive line that for much of the day really did struggle. Did not necessarily play their best football, especially on the right side of the offensive line. You lose, I'm blanking on the name right now. You lose your right tackle, apologies, but you lose your right tackle, then you have to move Michael Unai in there, then you have to move Bo Hewley in there later in the game. They were playing musical chairs on that offensive line, and they made it work. And Gunnar Stockton got hit a lot of times and still made some big-time passes. Everything about this team is in order. Everything about this team is where you want it to be. Now, the defense is going to have to take steps, but if you told me early in the season that the thing Georgia was going to have to fix is the Kirby Smart defense, I'd feel okay about them finding a way to get to the CFP and be a full national championship contender because I think he's going to figure it out. I have to imagine that Kirby Smart has a good plan for how to figure this thing out and get on the right track defensively. I'm not going to worry about that side of the ball with Kirby Smart in charge. So Georgia's in a great spot. They got to bye this week, and then they have their mental hurdle. The same way Tennessee has Georgia as a mental hurdle right now, Alabama comes to town in a couple of weekends for Georgia, and they got to be much better, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Alabama's going to play a really good defense. They're also going to play different defense than Tennessee did in a lot of ways. So it's going to be really interesting to watch what happens in that football game. For Tennessee, this is a playoff team. They did an incredible job in this football game. I think when you get back Jermod McCoy, when you get back Ricky Gibson, when you get back some of the players, David Sanders finally comes back, you are going to be okay. You're going to be in a position to win a lot of football games and continue on your way. You have one of the more favorable SEC schedules in the entire league. You have a layup against UAB next week. Then you go to Starkville for a game that could get a little bit sketchy. We've seen what Starkville has been able to do to people this year, but still firmly in the SEC race, still firmly in the CFP race. As far as I'm concerned, we watch 2 playoff teams play. We'll see how that develops, obviously. A lot to be said about the SEC, and we'll talk about that plenty throughout this show, but this is a very good Tennessee football team. You just ran into a guy that was a little bit more prepared. Now, the kick, obviously, you got yourself in a good position. I think there is an argument to be made that maybe Josh Heupel should have been a little bit more aggressive, but you're sitting at a 38-yarder before the false start. I really don't think it's that terrible. I think he did plenty in this game. I think Tennessee did plenty in this game to win. Georgia just ended up taking it at the very end. Texas A&M wins a game on the road against a top 10 opponent. Not something they have been very accustomed to over there in College Station, but this one was special in a number of different ways, and it was a game where a lot of things got a little bit toppled over, I guess the best way to put it, because This is a game that A&M loses 10 times out of 10 in the number of years prior. It was a number of years where, in all of these moments where they have the opening, they have the moment to step into the sunlight and be Texas A&M, be the team that they have all the capability in the world of being, they fall just short. Whether it was Texas last year in the SEC championship or a number of big games over the last couple of years, you beat Alabama a couple of years ago, but you kind of don't make the most out of that season. There's a number of things that A&M hasn't been able to do that they were able to do on Saturday. Mainly, they were able to play an offense where you threw the ball around a lot. And it was an offense that I did not expect to see from A&M this year. I expected them to be explosive. When you have guys like Mario Craver and Kevin Concepcion, you're going to be able to do a lot of that stuff. Those are special athletes that they went and got through the portal that I'm sure Dabo Swinney looking at it right now and saying, maybe you can fix some things throughout the portal. But at the end of the day, you got two special athletes on the outside. I thought this was going to be a run-first football team, and it still very much is, but they have the ability to make you hurt in every sense of the word down the field, and I think they're going to be able to do that just about every defense they play. Now, the Notre Dame defense has a lot of things to figure out. I don't know what's going on over there, but Leonard Moore is just about the only DB that's playing high-level football right now, and you're in a position where your pass rush has to be a whole lot better than it is right now. Obviously, Marcel Reed's a nightmare to get on the ground, but you got to find a way to do it, and you got to find a way to get guys like Boubacar Traore and get your linebacker core with Drake Bowen and all those guys, get them going in a big-time way. They haven't been able to do that early on in this year. Miami put together a great performance. A&M, the exact same thing, and the final drive was absolutely perfect. Now, the final play was a little bit far from perfect. Looked a little bit broken early in that one. Maybe definitely got the benefit of a missed call late in that game, but at the end of the day, makes a great play to, I'm going to try this, board catcher. A very, very interesting name. But at the end of the day, very, very good catch by that tight end with 13 seconds left. A special win for Mike Elko and company. One that they've been waiting for a very long time. And now you look forward with everything on the table. Firmly in the mix for the CFP. Firmly back in the mix for the SEC. Obviously a lot of work to do. Very, very tough games coming forward. You still have at LSU. You have Auburn coming up after the bye. They're coming off an Oklahoma game. You got at Missouri. You got at Texas. There are going to be tough games, but all the games that I just read, very winnable for this football team. There's no doubt about that. They can do a lot of really special things this year, especially if they get that output from their receivers. For Notre Dame, I just want to talk about the QB holder. What are we doing? Now, I'm not going to attack Tyler Buchner. He has gotten plenty. His college career has been one of the weirdest in the transfer portal era that I have ever seen. At the end of the day, it's not entirely his fault. Why are we giving that to a quarterback right now? He's got so much stuff to do in practice. He's got so much stuff to do on game day. Why are we giving him something that he does not need to handle? The punter can handle it. He's going to be really good at it in a lot of cases because he's got a lot of time to practice it. I don't really understand why we do this. Even Georgia does it with Gunnar Stockton. I don't get it. I don't know why they've done it. They've always done it under Kirby Smart. Very weird. But at the end of the day, I get trying to disguise things on a possible trick play. I don't think it's worth it, if I'm being totally honest, especially when you lose a game the way they lost this one. Tough finish in a number of different ways for a Notre Dame team that probably feels like they could be 2-0 right now. You're 0-2 and you're staring down a college football playoff uncertainty, I suppose. I think if you get 10-2, especially where you're ranked right now, which probably shouldn't be ranked, we'll talk about that later. At the end of the day, you're still in a position to beat Arkansas, to beat USC, to beat Pitt, and maybe get into the field. I do think it's up for debate. I do think it totally depends on what happens around them, and I don't think they're firmly in the mix. Now, they're Notre Dame, so I think we can make the argument that they're probably in pretty good shape in the grand scheme of things, but I don't think it should be enough. I think a lot of people would agree with me. We will see how this unfolds. Tend to believe they won't go 10-2 the way they're playing right now anyway, but at the end of the day, if they do, I know we're going to have a lot of people yelling. I don't know who's going to win out, but we'll see what happens there. A number of incredible things in this football game. Obviously, the holding was less than ideal, but you got the ball to Jeremiah Love a lot. 23 carries, 94 yards. Now, it's pretty good output for a Texas A&M defense that wasn't great against the run coming into this game. Didn't do a great job necessarily overall, but holding him to 94 yards on 23 carries is more than fine. Now, he had 4 catches for 53 yards and a score as well, so he's special. There's no two ways about that, but putting any type of cap on this guy is a win. I think keeping him under 100 yards on 23 carries is a win for A&M. So they move forward. Can't say enough about this football team. A lot of work to do, obviously, and they understand that as well as anyone. They started last year incredibly well. didn't necessarily go their direction. So a lot of work to be done for A&M, but an incredible win that they've been waiting for a long time around College Station to get. But these games were special. You had a game at noon that absolutely delivered in every sense of the word. You had a game at 3:30 that might end up being the game of the year when it's all said and done. And you had a game at night that really almost made all those other two games kind of forgotten about by the end of the night because you were so focused on what was happening in South Bend. It was special in a number of different ways, and it didn't stop there. We have a number of games to talk about. We'll talk about LSU getting a comfortable enough win at Miami, dominating South Florida, Vanderbilt dominating a Lenore Sellers list, South Carolina, and we'll talk about it all right after this, so stick with us.